Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering here today to address an issue that remains largely hidden behind closed doors, but affects hundreds of thousands of lives: narcissistic abuse. When we hear the word abuse, many of us immediately think of physical violence or overt mistreatment. But narcissistic abuse is often subtle, insidious, and, ironically, hardest to recognize precisely because of its emotional sophistication. Today, I want to shine a light on what narcissistic abuse looks like, why so many victims remain trapped in it until they finally escape, and how, far too often, survivors go on to develop complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPTSD, which can take years, even decades, to fully heal. What is narcissistic abuse? At its core, narcissistic abuse is a pattern of manipulative, controlling, and demeaning behavior enacted by someone with narcissistic traits or narcissistic personality disorder. We usually think of narcissists as people who crave attention, praise, and admiration, and indeed they do. But the more dangerous element is how they use charm, gaslighting, and emotional manipulation to undermine, confuse, and ultimately dominate their partner, friend, or family member. Victims often describe feeling disoriented, doubting their own judgment, or wondering if they are crazy for feeling hurt. This is deliberate. The narcissist's aim is to control the narrative, to shape reality so that the victim becomes dependent on them for validation. Why victims don't always recognize the abuse. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of narcissistic abuse is that people rarely see it while it's happening. In the beginning, the narcissist moves in with dazzling charm, sometimes called love bombing. They shower you with affection, praise your every accomplishment, and make you feel like the most cherished person in the world. You feel lucky, special, chosen. But once you're emotionally invested, their mask begins to slip. Small criticisms appear. Backhanded compliments turn into verbal put-downs. You chalk it up to a bad day, stress at work, or miscommunication. You make allowances. After all, you love them. Over time, those little things escalate. Gaslighting. They deny things they said or did. If you bring up a hurtful comment, they say, "You're imagining things," or "You're being too sensitive," so you begin to question your own memory and perception. Isolation. First, your friends express concern. Then, suddenly, the narcissist tells you that your friends are jealous, or that they don't understand you. Slowly, you drift away from support systems, family, friends, colleagues, because you feel guilty for choosing them over me. Devaluation. The affection and praise vanish overnight. Now, you're incompetent, lazy, or unlovable. Everything you do is criticized. You scramble to recapture that early admiration, but it never returns. At this point, you're in the fog of abuse, confused, anxious, and desperate to believe that things will improve. You blame yourself. If only I were more patient, more understanding, more attentive. That self-blame keeps you trapped. The moment of clarity, after escape. Then comes the day you muster the courage to walk away. Perhaps you move out. Perhaps you end the phone calls. Perhaps you set a hard boundary. And something remarkable happens. Suddenly, the world makes sense again. You realize your self-esteem has been shattered. You see the pattern of lies, the constant shifting of blame, the emotional withholding. Everything clicks into place. That inexplicable sadness, the sleepless nights, the way you began doubting your own instincts. Now you see them for what they were. Survival mechanisms in a toxic relationship. This moment of clarity can be both liberating and devastating. Liberating because you finally see reality. Devastating because you recognize how much damage has already been done. You realize that the absurd reasons you were given to justify the narcissist's anger. "You didn't rub my shoulders the right way," or "You weren't enthusiastic enough about my career," were never about you at all. They were power plays. They were tactics to keep you off balance. Signs you are in a relationship with a narcissist. If you are listening and wondering whether you, or someone you love, may be enduring this kind of abuse, here are some red flags. Excessive charm. Followed by sudden devaluation. At first, your partner seemed perfect, attentive, thoughtful, generous. But after a short honeymoon phase, they started criticizing you for little things that made no sense. Constant gaslighting and denial. When you confront them about lying or manipulating, they insist they never said that, or that you misunderstood. They shift blame onto you, making you feel like the offender. Isolation from loved ones. Friends and family drift away, or you are made to feel guilty for wanting to spend time with them. The narcissist insists they are the only one who truly gets you. Emotional withholding as punishment. Instead of talking through problems, they give you the silent treatment, withdraw affection, or threaten to leave you emotionally when you don't comply with their demands. Unrealistic expectations. They demand perfect compliance with their needs. If you do not cater to every whim, you are labeled as selfish or ungrateful. Lack of empathy. When you are in pain or share your feelings, they brush it off or turn the conversation back to themselves. True empathy feels like a foreign concept to them. When narcissistic abuse turns into CPTSD, pain and confusion are normal after any breakup. But victims of long-term narcissistic abuse often experience something far more severe. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD. While PTSD is usually associated with a single traumatic event, like a car accident or combat, CPTSD stems from prolonged, repeated trauma. In the case of narcissistic abuse, this trauma is psychological and emotional, inflicted day after day, year after year. Common signs of CPTSD include hypervigilance. You remain on constant alert for danger. Any tone of voice, any misinterpreted expression feels like a potential threat. You are jumpy, anxious, unable to relax. Flashbacks and intrusive thoughts. Memories of derogatory comments or humiliating confrontations invade your mind, sometimes triggered by something as simple as a raised voice or a certain smell. Emotional numbing and dissociation. You feel disconnected from your own emotions. It's as if a part of you stepped out of your body to shield you from the pain. You struggle to feel joy or pleasure, even in safe surroundings. Shattered sense of self. The narcissist's constant devaluation destroyed your confidence. You may not recognize yourself anymore. You may replay every interaction, convinced that you are inherently unworthy of love or respect. Difficulty with trust and future relationships. Once you finally break free, you may find it impossible to trust anyone again. You anticipate betrayal or manipulation in every new friendship or romantic connection. Physical symptoms. Chronic fatigue, headaches, stomach problems. Your body has been in a constant state of fight or flight, and it shows. Many survivors tell me they expected to bounce back after 1 or 2 therapy sessions. They believed that because they left the abuser, the pain would vanish. But CPTSD doesn't resolve overnight. It can take years, often a lifetime, of consistent therapy, support groups, mindfulness practices, and maybe even medication. The path to healing is neither linear nor easy. There will be setbacks. But with each step forward, survivors can rebuild a sense of self-worth, safety, and genuine connection to others. Why we must take this seriously. It is easy to dismiss narcissistic abuse as just drama or relationship problems. But for those trapped inside, it is devastating. Left unchecked, it alters brain chemistry, erodes social support, and can lead to severe depression, anxiety disorders, and even suicidal ideation. When CPTSD takes hold, victims might self-medicate, isolate further, or develop chronic health issues. We cannot afford to ignore this. As a community, whether we are therapists, educators, social workers, friends, or family members, we have a responsibility to listen without judgment, to validate survivors' experiences, and to point them toward professional help when needed. If someone you know has become a shadow of themselves, if they seem afraid of speaking up, or constantly apologize for things they shouldn't have to, consider that they might be in the grip of narcissistic manipulation. Offer them resources, hotlines, counseling centers, domestic abuse shelters. Remind them that they are not to blame. A call to action. Let us pledge right now to break the silence. If you have survived narcissistic abuse, know that your story matters. Your voice can be someone else's lifeline. If you're witnessing it in someone you love, even if they don't see it, be brave enough to reach out. Say, "I believe you. I see the pain behind your laughter. You deserve better." And if you suspect you are living under the influence of a narcissist, give yourself permission to investigate the truth. Keep a journal of confounding incidents. Talk to a trusted friend or counselor who can help you see patterns. Reach out to abuse hotlines to educate yourself. Most importantly, remember that no one has the right to diminish your worth or rewrite your reality. Narcissistic abuse is real. So is CPTSD. But recovery is possible. It starts with awareness and thrives with community support. Together, we can create a world where survivors are no longer silenced by shame, confusion, or isolation. Together, we can ensure that no one has to walk the road of healing alone. Thank you.